Last year, I found this bare-bones Dell Precision T5600 system listed for just under $250 on eBay, but unfortunately, even though it came with an 835-watt power supply, the CPU coolers for the two Xeon processors were not included. After checking online, I found that the OEM coolers for the machine appear to be absurdly expensive at almost $70 a piece. I just decided to go for Cooler Master's Side-On 120V instead, which I got for just over $25 a piece. Today I'll be showing you the process of disassembling, extending, and refilling these all-in-one liquid coolers to make the whole setup a lot cleaner. The coolers are held onto the slightly non-standard LG 2011 socket with a couple of long M4 bolts, with nuts and spring washers to space them out correctly. I did most of my disassembly inside a plastic bin to keep the coolant from making a mess. After draining most of the liquid, I went and ran water through the cooler to get rid of the remaining coolant, just so it doesn't make another mess. It was nearly impossible to pull the tubing off the connectors, even after heating it up a little. I found that it was just way easier to just slice it with a knife and pull it right off. Here I've marked out the flow of the pump, which I found by connecting it to a power supply. I'll be putting two water block pumps in series with just one radiator. That's actually all we need here. The polyethylene tubing I bought fits perfectly on the 1/4 inch barbs, though some heat might make this easier. I used a piece of excess tube to protect the coolant pipes from the sharp metal edges of the case. Be really careful around the metal edges, since on this system they haven't been rounded off. With the coolant pipes in place, all that's left to do is reinstall the water blocks to the processors, with a bit of thermal paste under each. I'm just using some cheap GD900 brand stuff from China, which was actually an excellent deal and works surprisingly well. I tightened the screws by hand first, and then tensioned them a little with the screwdriver. Make sure you don't tighten them down too tight though, otherwise you'll damage the socket. Just tight enough that there's reasonable resistance to movement. That's enough. In order to help fill the system, I used a small fountain pump I found at the junkyard a few years ago. Pretty much anything will work here as long as it fits the pipe. To fill the system, I put a bit of basically the cheapest automotive coolant I could get into a plastic tub and used the little pump to push the liquid in. It's not going to go all the way, but it's enough to prime the first pump. After that, I just plugged in the PC and let the two coolant pumps circulate the green liquid until most of the air bubbles disappeared. Restarting the machine a few times seems to help get rid of the remaining air bubbles that refuse to leave. To finish the install, I just submerged the radiator connections in the coolant so that no air would get in, and transferred the free pipe over to it while it was still pumping. I just pushed it on. Here's what I ended up with at the end. The single radiator actually does a great job of dissipating the heat load, which is about 150 watts, from both processors, and actually both processors stay under 55 degrees, even with 32 threads of Prime 95. So, I'm fairly sure it'll work out quite well. I'm mostly building this PC to browse the internet, so I'm not really concerned about overclocking, but I'm fairly sure it'll be fine. And finally, we'll just put the side panel right back on the case, and now all that's left to do is clean up the cables under the desk. I guess that's about it for today. Feel free to leave a comment, or I guess I'll just see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.